I'm Bob Larsen. I was the Olympic distance coach in 2004. Recently, we've started a training group. When I retired from UCLA in 2000, I got together with Joe Vigil, who had retired from Adams State. And in 2000, we were kind of at a low point in the United States with American distance running. So we saw an opportunity to try to do something for post-collegiate American distance runners, to try to get them up to a competitive level that had risen in the early or late 1990s. And we needed to close the gap with what they were doing. And for the most part, most of the distance runners that were getting medals in international Olympic and world championships were training at altitude. So we wanted to support post-collegiate athletes, take them to altitude and see what we could do, and to increase our use of physiology and all the other scientific information we needed to get back to one of the best nations in the world. So at the present time, in 2012, for instance, I think all of the Americans who made the Olympic team, 800 meters and on up, had done some training at altitude, versus in 2000, when we put this project together, there were really hardly any Americans training at altitude. So our two leaders, Meb Keflezighi and Dina Castor, who got medals in 2004, I was very fortunate to be the Olympic coach for the distances, won medals in the marathon. And so it made our job a lot easier to convince people that altitude was something that they needed to add to their component of training if we were going to be successful on an international level. It probably wasn't that revolutionary in that probably 95 to 99% of all the medalists in international championship races were actually trained at altitude, living at altitude. But it was revolutionary for the Americans to a certain degree. They hadn't accepted it. Part of it was most American coaches are based at sea level, and I don't blame them. It's hard to get to altitude, especially if you're coaching a collegiate team. You're based at sea level. So we had to try to prove that this would help us immensely, and that this was a component we really needed to become, again, competitive at the highest level. And I can't give enough credit to Meb and Dina for committing to coming up to Mammoth. I've suggested that we use that because it's the ideal altitude. We spent a lot of time talking to physiologists on the amount of time, when you should come down, getting all those components correct. But again, it wouldn't have probably taken effect if it wasn't for Meb and Dina. And Dina, since then, besides the medal in Athens in the Olympic Games, first time in 20 years, Meb first time in 28 years for an American. Dina won 2 more of the major marathons in the world. Meb has won New York in 2009 and came back in April 21st and won the Boston Marathon. So it continues to emphasize what we were trying to do way back in 2000, which was bring attention to what we could really do. And in going back again to 2012 in London in the Olympic Games, our not only our marathoners with Meb, but many other athletes were extremely competitive in most of the distance events, which hasn't been true for quite a while. It's hard to believe it's been 30 years. I can remember what a wonderful time it was in Los Angeles. I was coaching at UCLA. the city was energized. And to go over to the Coliseum and watch the Olympic games, we had one of the Olympic villages was actually, it was divided between USC and UCLA. So to interact with so many international great athletes and coaches, just a wonderful time. Randy Newman's I Love LA. It still plays in my head when I walk in this evening, and Peter Ueberroth and what he did in heading up the organization to make this thing a success. It's been a template for all the Olympics since '84, and we're still enjoying in Los Angeles the benefits of the '84 Olympic Games, because that money is still being dispersed through Anita de France and LA '84 to so many groups, especially the youth groups, who have profited immensely from the money that was generated way back in 30 years ago.